Welcome to the Northern Ontario Mining Showcase podcast. It's a limited series for the Echo Community Podcast Network by Story Studio Network and Clark Communications. We highlight the influential voices, partners, and leaders who are driving innovation, research, and development, creating new market opportunities and new ways of doing business in the mining industry.
My name is Don Duval, and I'm the CEO of the NORCAT Group of Companies, headquartered in Sudbury, Ontario.
And you give us a sense of, when NORCAT is involved. I mean, there's obviously new tech. There's always a conversation about what I'm certainly seeing here, everything from, the use of satellites to the drones in the mines. There are places where the brain goes that when I always put myself back at the first PDAC conference. I mean, these guys, their brains would have exploded if 98 years ago or whatever it was, you're talking about what we've got on the floor here.
Yeah. No, and it's an interesting observation in that, if you look at the mining industry, over the last 30, 40 years, the mining industry themselves, the operators, have gradually divested what once was their eminent in-house R&D engineering function, where these operators used to build their own technologies and build their proprietary differentiation through product development. And that's gave way to, they've now divested a lot of that. And this is a generalization, of course, but they've now started to divest that, creating an outsourced innovation model, meaning the mining industry still has problems to solve and challenges to address, but no longer do they build the solutions, they have to buy them. So that's given rise to what you see here today. There is a burgeoning, vibrant, be it startup or small, medium enterprise or global OEMs that have to build these innovative technologies and innovative solutions to solve the intractable issues that the mining industry faces. So the vibrancy that you're seeing here, I think, is going to continue to skyrocket over the next coming years. So it's your observation is astute in that the pulse is really, exciting and vibrant because of the pull in the market. They need these technologies to maintain competitiveness, shareholder value, safety, productivity. And as I said, it's only going to get better.
Well, and we've discovered just a casual conversation or sitting down formally to talk to people. I mentioned the LiDAR. We talked to somebody who can actually, break up the rock to a specific size so that they know exactly what they're getting and what's going on the conveyor belt and what's going it's incredible. It sounds like a small thing, but around the margins, that stuff makes a difference.
Well, and it's interesting. There's a narrative that, the mining industry, being a legacy industry, isn't innovative, or there's limited technologies available. And I have a very strong opinion that the mining industry doesn't have a technology or an innovation problem, where the root of the challenge might be in technology adoption. So you're going to see a variety of technologies here that could be game changers in the mining industry, but the industry itself still has to navigate, how do you, as an operator, how do you procure, how do you integrate, how do you adopt, how do you deploy? Because on the surface, you look at these, what seemingly are small technologies that could be absolutely transformative, but if you peel the onion and engage that tech company saying, well, how are your sales? And you might come to learn, wow, it's actually quite small. And then you peel the onion again and you realize that part of the challenge is it's a long sales cycle because the mining industry continues to transform or evolve into buyers. So the sophistication of integration, adoption, because all these different point solutions, it's hard when you want to stick them all together to extract meaningful value at a corporate level. So a lot of these technologies here do have the potential, even if it seems small, but there's still a little bit of work that needs to be done on expediting the technology adoption in these big legacy companies that are scattered throughout the world.
Yeah, if mining were from a state, it'd be Missouri. It wants, show me, and make sure you show me it works, and then we're going to invest. And there's that kind of not that they're adverse to the technology, but somebody said to me, if I make a mistake, it could be $1 billion mistake.
100%. Yeah, so the mining industry from two halves. One could argue the mining industry is extremely risky, and I would apportion that to the geological side, whereby you pay a bunch of money, have a handful of geologists, drill a bunch of samples, and then you infer that this is the materiality of the commodity you're looking for embedded in the ground. Go for it. Well, God, you better hope you're right.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, the mining industry is extremely risk adverse in that when you're in production and operation, you have workers down at the face. You can't afford to, hey, let's try this new tech and see if it works. No, not at all. You need to have that valid comfort that when you deploy that technology, that it'll work. Not in a laboratory, not on a trade show floor such as here at PDAC. You need to know that it'll work in the operating environment, deliver on what it says it can do, both productively and safely. That takes time. And therefore, and that's not necessarily a regulatory oversight from a national or subnational government. That's a corporate policy where they want to make sure that these technologies work. And now multiply that with a bunch of them coming in at the same time, and then you can appreciate why there's still work to be done on expediting technology adoption. But this here validates that the mining industry does not have a technology problem. There's a ton of technologies that are available. We're just now working to kind of streamline the process of procuring, adopting, and diffusing these technologies within a given operation.
So how much of your time is spent on that? Just talking people down off the ledge and saying, don't worry, this is going to work.
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. It's tough to characterize that. When people ask me, what is the state of affairs of the global mining industry? What's your optimism on the future? You can go down the commodity path, the market demand, the qualified mineral potential within, the global landscape. But on the flip side, when you want to have conversations around, what's going to really make the mining industry competitive and what's going to make it more safe, I can go on for hours about the myriad of technologies that are out there that are available, that are just seeking that first customer opportunity to, adopt and deploy. And when, wherever there's any skepticism, another really interesting observation, and this to me validates the materiality of the supply service tech ecosystem selling into the mining industry. If we were to sit here, say 5-7 years ago, and you were to ask me, name me 5 venture capital firms that primarily or have a portion of their fund focused on investing in tech companies that primarily sell into mining, I don't think I can name you more than one. Now, fast forward, 7 years later to today, I say there's about a dozen in Canada alone. And when you aggregate the pool of funds that are, I'm not going to say earmarked, but thematically are really looking at tech ventures, startups or small enterprises selling into mining, it's probably close to $500 million of deployable equity investment capital that the markets, the private capital markets have aggregated to say, look, mining industry has to buy. They don't build it anymore. So now that there's a channel of a demand path, let's pump money into these companies to help expedite that growth to transform this really important industry, not only to Canada, but around the world.
Yeah, just to be clear to people, and this is hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of the value of the sector in and of itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't ignore that. I've talked to a number of people, though, who said the investment in the tech is no offense, but it's the cool, shiny thing. I mean, a lot of people will look at it and say that's what innovation's all about. The other side of it, though, is, and you sort of touched on it already, is that, exploration and development. And that's where the capital is sort of slow. I'm hearing that they're having a harder time to get that money into those things. And it doesn't matter how great your tech is. If I don't have a hole in the ground that's working. So, there's got to be that balance in the overall sector, right?
Yeah, and I think, the nature of exploration and projects is cyclical.
Sure.
Typically these mining operators will apportion an annual budgeted amount of money focused on exploration. And if you want to tie that in the tech landscape, that's the money allocated. And then what they kind of do a call to the market for, find me a service provider or technologies that can help me drill more holes faster so I can get more data to get more comfort around characterizing the ore body. And there's some fabulous technologies. A company called Ideon that is headquartered in Vancouver. Two founders, startup venture, raising around a capital, doing its thing, proof of pilots or pilot proofs out in the marketplace right now, where they take existing core holes, so you envision the long core that you drill, half a kilometer down, hold out the core, and then you get kind of a stratification to determine what the ore body might look like, and do that like Swiss cheese throughout. And then you get a hopeful picture of what the ore body looks like. This company can drop passive sensors down the existing holes at different depths, throughout the whole Swiss cheese. The sensors can be designed to communicate with each other. It uses muon technology from outer space, and over a period of 6 or 12 months, whatever it might be, the reflection of all the data points can further refine and validate to give confidence to the exploration and the geologists that, yep, not only do we have the core samples, but now we have this ability to see through the rock to validate. Then it's easier to go to the markets and say, hey, publicly traded markets and prospective investors, not only do we have the core drilling, but we also have this sophisticated technology that's further validated and refined the picture of the ore body. Give us $1 billion.
So we know where the density is in a certain part of it, where it wears out in other parts of the
It's remarkable. And your other comment, I think it's a really interesting note around, these new technologies could be overwhelming. one of the most important things, and one of our aspirational priorities at NORCAT is to be the global leader in skilled labor training and development. And one of the interesting kind of components of this transition around the technology transformation is that there needs to be a level of confidence and competence with the skilled labor workforce that will be utilizing these new technologies. So you can appreciate the complexities of a mine worker who spent, say 20 years underground using kind of the same process with the same technology, and all of a sudden being introduced to a new AI autonomous operation to do, a similar activity to enhance productivity and improve safety. The people component and providing the education to understand how to effectively use these tools. A lot of the startups and small enterprises that just want to get a sale and integrate and work with the customer, there's a lot of work being done to say, well, how do we upskill quickly to build the baseline competence and confidence in this workforce to maximize the return on using this technology? Where now you're seeing interesting conversations, the decisions to adopt and deploy new technologies, especially given the labor market pressure right now in the Canadian mining industry, meaning operators over the next 10 years are going to need 60, 70,000 new mine workers, and general interest in the traditional mining perspective.
The funnel ain't there.
But here's what I think the narrative is, and we're hearing it at some board level discussions with operators in Canada. Not only now are they looking at adopting and deploying technologies to do the aforementioned benefits, shareholder value, competitiveness, productivity, safety, whatever it might be. The conversations now have a supplementary to them, meaning the decisions or discussions rather at the board level are saying, okay, not only do we need to adopt for those reasons, but now we also need to do it to win the battle for talent. We need to create jobs where an aspiring young 22-year-old mine worker no longer has to spend 12 hours a day underground at the face. Now we can give them a iPad-like kiosk, take Hardline, a company that's part of the Hexagon Group of Companies, where you can give them a platform, a technology platform that arguably, for analogous purposes, can have it in the confines of their own home with a high-speed internet, with camera and TV technology, and they can operate that exact same piece of equipment from the confines of their living room. That's a job that people will find very interesting and appealing, and it's tech-based.
And all the more easy to do because you've got elements like Starlink all of a sudden that connects you where you never had connection before.
So that kind of paints a picture of, this technology transformation not only is rooted in, again, the reasons we've spoken about, but now you're hearing conversations with mining operators saying, gosh, not only do we need to do that for now, but we need to create jobs that people want, because if you look at the labor market forecasted demand that we as a collective industry will need in Canada, we need to hurry up, because I know these young individuals will love a job that controls an iPad that pays 6 figures a year from the confines of their living room.
So who holds the pen on that? Because it can't just be NORCAT that does. I mean, I understand that there's a competitive advantage for you to be able to say, I want to identify the skills and develop the skill, but really the industry is greater than the sum of its parts. So who has to hold the pen on that? That's an important part of it. That's not really about the business of mining primarily.
Well, the one, I don't know if it's unique or not, but the one interesting observation in the Canadian mining industry, be it again at the national or subnational levels in aggregate, there is a collective concern that there is declining interest, be it on the skilled labor worker and or the executive level, of individuals wanting to work in the mining industry. A lot of that is rooted in the perception of what the industry is amongst, would-be, college and or university students graduating high school, and they're faced with an option. The portrayal of...
So let me just touch on the perception. Is that perception because I don't want to work underground in the dark and that far away from home? Or is that an environmental issue? Or where are those perceptions that are sort of bogging you down?
It's a hybrid of what you just said. Absolutely. There is a perception still of the coal worker at the face, covered in coal, breathing in, and that is not the case anymore, especially in the developed economies. And some of the more rural communities, yes, I'm sure some of the mining environment is not great. But in the Canadian economy, that is not what the job looks like. So there's a campaign from the Ontario Mining Association, This Is Mine Life, that is extremely focused on gathering the insight and data by a whole series of interviews with elementary and high school students and college and university students. And they validate that if you ask them what career they want, they talk about all of them, mining is dead last. And it's not even likely to consider. It's off the charts. When you peel the onion again on that, why? Because of what they believe it to be.
Right.
So I have spent, in NORCAT collectively, you're right, we're one small piece of the broader equation as it pertains to the skilled labor workforce. When I am going to a school or I'm going to a conference, I will highlight most of the technologies and say, here's the job that actually accompanies using this technology. You don't have to necessarily work for the mining operator. You can work for a supply service company flying the drone to do an assessment. And by the way, you may or may not need to be underground, but you get to use this really interesting platform, or you get to operate a teleremote or autonomous vehicle from the confines of your own living room. It's just, I can't think of any other way than we just collectively as an industry, operators especially, have to get out there and portray the industry to attract. And then once they're in, have to figure out creative ways to retain them by creating jobs that this industry will want. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of stress. Technology isn't going to solve everything. You still need people to control and operate and deploy and maintain these technologies.
Yeah, let's do, just before we finish, I want to go back to what you sort of started on saying, and the whole the adoption of new technology, and slow to do that for a whole bunch of reasons that we've already talked about. Now you're adding a level of complexity to that in terms of a whole new skill set that is, a different lexicon, a different language in mining. And you've got a certain experienced demographic in the mining sector who may be ready to retire, but again, these are the guys who were doing it different. And they've always done it this way for so many years. Has to be a cultural change here, literally, right? I mean, when you think about it, and without ignoring that top-end experience, you're going to have to somehow mesh and marry that with this new young technological energy that's going to come into the market.
And if you don't, you will miss. The mining operators that understand that in order to attract and subsequently retain new young workers have to create jobs that they want. Again, the benefit of the technology adoption has its financial return, but now the conversations have segued into, we need to do this to win the battle for talent. And I think it's a right way of looking at it. You have to look at it not in isolation, but collectively, we as a company, let's do this. And I've seen some companies doing some wonderful things.
Is there a role there for government? Because I think skilled labor in and of itself is often viewed as sub-labor. I mean, there are a lot of people who will say, I don't want my kid to be doing whatever skilled trade is because I'd rather have them be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or something that's professional. So you talk about the perception around mining is one thing. There's also a perception battle around skilled labor that you have to overcome.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I think the government, especially in Ontario, has done a wonderful job highlighting the importance and the eminence associated with the skilled trades. We, for a long period of time, I would argue you're right, neglected it, portrayed it as a secondary opportunity. If you don't succeed at university, then go to college. My, has the world changed.
Yeah.
Not only from a financial return too, like these young individuals, they're making six figures in a very short period of time if they're an electrician or a welder.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I was at a conference in Thompson, Manitoba about 2 weeks ago, and they were highlighting the demand for welders in northern Manitoba. And if you have the core skills, you'll be making six figures and you're in your early 20s doing a wonderful job in northern Manitoba.
Yeah.
So the tables have rightfully so turned, and now we're catching up and we're feeling the pain.
Yeah.
Have you hired a contractor recently? It's challenging.
Well, and it's a good story that probably needs to be better emphasized, I would say, in terms of that kind of shift in the culture, the shift in the skills, the shift in the perception of the skill trade.
Well, and the shift again, thinking the alignment of the technology transformation, now you're also seeing the need for more incremental learning more often. And by that I mean, if you look at the deployment of communication infrastructure in underground mines, historically there was one model of this way, then you started to see Wi-Fi, and now you're seeing 4G, 5G, private networks underground. So envision a mine saying, okay, let's put in Wi-Fi. And then let's say a couple years later they put in 5G. You'll need to figure out creative ways to retrain those people very quickly, because if you lose communication underground, well, it becomes a domino effect. So you're starting.
But that progress has to be baked into the plan. That's baked into the attraction of actually taking on this, because as you go, you're going to progress in the world that you live in. You're not just kind of be in one lane for now and ever.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And one of our interesting groups at NORCAT too is we build a lot of I'll call them skilled labor training development solutions using VR and AR.
Right.
And in that, we are now also creating awareness by immersing young would-be potential candidates to work in the mining industry, putting them in the experience to see what it feels like underground, but not just walking the proverbial hallway underground and looking at the face and the back of the underground mine, but actually putting in interesting technologies in the experience where they can be provoked to ask questions like, what is that? What is that? And then you start to see this enlightenment around, wow, I had no idea. So again, small part that we play, but we build these solutions, and we have it here today on the trade show floor where you can actually see what it's like, and you'll do it with a technology component, not just a tour.
Yeah, the real magic of curiosity, right?
100%.
It's secret sauce all the time. Listen, this has been good. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We'll chat again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Northern Ontario Mining Showcase podcast. The series is produced for the Echo Community Podcast Network by Story Studio Network and Clark Communications. For more information, visit our website, northbayecho.ca.